Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. I'm Dan Stilgo, Marketing Manager at Blend, and joined by Phil Vallander, Co-founder at Blend. And today, somehow, for the very first time on this podcast, we're discussing AI in demand generation to be exact. But before you turn off thinking this is probably just another podcast talking about the unlimited use that AI could possibly have and how it's changing marketing, exploring the endless possibilities, just note today we're actually going beyond the hype and discussing real ways to use AI right now in demand generation. And this isn't just conceptual thinking about how you might be able to implement it. This is real advice about how you should be using AI right now, and if not, you might be left behind. Phil, we've been quite intentional, I would say, about avoiding the AI chat until now because we're all about bringing real practical insights to our audience, right? And that's exactly what we're doing today.
Yeah, that's true. It's an exciting topic, but we've held off because we do like to be sure in our minds what is good advice to give, what is really worth marketers knowing and thinking from us, as opposed to the temptation that exists to jump on a bandwagon regardless of the real use cases, applications and benefits. And that's always been our approach at Blend. We've always tried to work out what produces the most reliable, repeatable and predictable marketing results for B2Bs particularly, and share that once we know it. So no different on the subject of AI for that very reason.
This podcast is brought to you by Blend. We're a B2B website and demand generation agency. We work with ambitious businesses just like yours to create and execute effective demand generation strategies that drive pipeline for your business. We also recognize that your website is the most important asset you have in marketing. So we specialize in building scalable websites on HubSpot that convert the demand that you've created. If you want to find out more about our services and see real results that we've generated for businesses, visit blendb2b.com.
I actually feel quite lucky because I studied AI at university quite a few years ago now, and it's come an incredibly long way since then. But having had the opportunity to build a little neural network which told a person that was entering some information a few things about themselves based on that information, it's about as far removed as from what AI can do today as it's possible to be, but there are still some fundamentals in there that I feel pretty fortunate to have learned. And you know, I think it's important to understand like what AI really is and how it's working when you're considering what the viable use cases are and what they're not potentially. So that's really useful knowledge that I'm grateful to have. Although it's not exactly transferable to today's
what was the university last year?
If only. Neural networks are still part of what we call AI today, but they have evolved in such significant ways that they do things that simply wasn't really even it was thinkable, but it wasn't necessarily believable at the time when I was studying them. But the fact that they are still essentially neural networks, they are still processing information that we give them in a certain way, is a big factor in where they have applications and where they don't today, particularly when we think about the generative form of AI, which has got everybody so excited. 2 points before we dive in, because the first point to bear in mind is that, of course, in truth, AI is not new in marketing. We've had forms of AI around for a long, long time. Most often machine learning as opposed to the sort of more general, more broad, more human-like AI. But there's been machine learning in the tools, in the platforms, in the techniques that we use for quite some time. So AI itself is not new, but generative AI and how much it replicates humanity and how it creates content, how it communicates, how it responds to us, has obviously just created a spark, and people are off to the races with it now. And it is very, very different to those machine learning, algorithms that mostly operate invisibly, on our behalf. They're built into the things that we use. We don't necessarily see them acting on our behalf, so it's very different. But I would warn people that, we are, I think, definitely experiencing a hype cycle right now where generative AI has lots of great uses. I'm very passionate about it. I love using it. I've got lots of use cases for it, as have you. But we are definitely in a period of time where the claims that are being made about where and when and how you can use generative AI specifically would appear to far exceed where there's proof for those claims. And I'm seeing a lot of content online, particularly on LinkedIn, about applications where, thankfully, there are experts out there who are able to say with high degree of trustworthiness that generative AI is not a solution for that particular use case or that particular challenge because of what generative AI is, the way that it produces its output, not being a machine learning algorithm that can do math the same way, that is deterministic in the same way. It's a generative product which produces, words that it's, for example, in the case of written words that it believes exist in the right order. That is not the solution to all problems. So I reckon we're in for an adjustment, a bit of a reset. I don't know if it will look anything like previous hype cycle resets, like the dot-com bubble bursting, but it feels like it's necessary to get to a place where actually we're all seeing the benefits of AI and not just being sold a bit of snake oil to some extent. But within marketing, there are most definitely quite a range of ways that you can apply AI, and we found some to be very, very reliable and beneficial and effective.
Yeah. So I mean, I quite like the buckets that you were giving them when we were talking before this podcast. We've got strategy, execution, and analysis.
Yeah.
And I think the one that's most available and apparent to everybody is how to use AI within execution.
Yeah.
Particularly on the content side of things.
Yes. When we think about marketing, I think we can break it down into those buckets and sort of say that, within each of those phases, of the cycle, you're doing very different things. Strategy, execution, analysis, all very important, but all very different. Within execution is where AI is having its current, heyday.
Yeah.
And it's definitely got lots of applications. And it won't come as a surprise to anybody, partly because of the name, large language model, that is powering most generative AI these days, and because of the role of content creation within demand generation execution, that content creation in the written form is the most obvious and the most sort of achievable place to apply AI with real impact and real benefits.
Yeah. I'm sure most people listening to this have tried AI in content writing at least once or twice, especially when like OpenAI and ChatGPT first came out, and with the later kind of advancements of Claude and things like that. And perhaps we're a bit disappointed with what they first got out of the tool. And even now, if you just go to a blank chat with ChatGPT or Claude and you ask it to write you some content on a particular subject, probably be quite disappointed again with what you get back. But the advancement in the ability to upload knowledge and add instructions it's just an absolute game changer for the output that you can get.
Yeah. Given that large language models are trained on all or large volumes of the existing content on a subject, it doesn't come as a big surprise, I don't think, to see when you ask it a question, you get a response, an answer, an output that feels pretty mediocre, pretty averaged, pretty unoriginal, because that kind of fits with the way the whole product has been created. But it's impressive what you can achieve when you supplement that question, that prompt, with additional context and content. It's impressive that the same model can generate such a different output and a different response when you give it the benefit of that additional resource to work with. And that's where we've really seen, turned a corner in terms of the application of AI in content creation by getting past the mediocre kind of drivel, frankly, the AI slop that will be generated if you simply say, describe this topic for me, versus what you get if you say, okay, large language model, to talk to it as if it were a human, you're a person with this expertise, you write in this style, you take this approach, and here's all the supporting knowledge and information. It's kind of weird because that information's already in there, but in truth, by giving it that background information aligned to your wishes and requirements as an output, you're able to get something pretty darn good. And that has been the game changer for us in terms of using AI to create content regularly and with good success.
I mean, yeah, amazing success, I would say. The thing is with AI naturally doesn't have a unique point of view. What the content that AI is trained on is generic content that everybody has access to. But the thing that you have to remember with content writing and demand generation, when you want to really capture an audience and distribute a unique point of view, AI is not going to have that naturally. So I think the big unlock for us was, one, training an AI essentially with our information, our content, our tone, and our writing style, but then being able to leverage our unique point of view as well from things like this podcast, from calls that we have, all of this unstructured data that had nowhere to go, which now has a perfect home in AI to become our point of view and elaborate on our point of view and structure it into content, basically.
Yeah. AI, large language models, are in their own sense not that creative. So you have to give it additional support to get a unique point of view or an original concept out of it in the form of a piece of written content. But let's get specific for people, because you've worked really hard on this, and I think it is the secret to success here, which is the way to get content out of a large language model that meets the requirements of demand generation, for real, is three things. It's the instructions you give to that model about how to give you a response, what you're expecting, what you're looking for from it. It's the knowledge, which is largely pre-existing content that you feel is a good example of what you want to get out, right? It's our previous blog posts, articles, pillar pages, conversations on the topic.
Writing style, tone of voice, incredibly important as well.
Resources to support the writing process. And then it's the brief, ultimately, the prompt for the piece of content you want. And in that area, we've really had good results by using the transcripts of long video and of long podcast episodes as the source material for those prompts. Is that right?
Yes. Sorry, just making a couple of notes there. Because the instructions, which you did touch on first, are probably the most important part of... We're talking about, Claude specifically here that we've had use with, by the way. The instructions are really important for giving the AI strict instructions on what you want out of it, but also getting it to push back.
Yep.
I found quite useful. So basically saying, if you don't have this information, push back, until you can create this piece of content, whether it be a blog, email, so it doesn't matter what it is, outline what you want from the output and tell the AI to push back when it doesn't have that information. It's
pretty amazing that you can actually get it to do that and it benefits the process, doesn't it? To your point, we're talking fairly specifically about Claude projects here, because Claude has almost always had the edge in terms of written output quality. We've always found.
Yeah, definitely.
And the introduction of Claude projects just created the perfect way to structure this approach. Although I have had similar success with ChatGPT, custom GPTs on my own time and in my own tests, where you are able to essentially fashion a similar kind of solution using pre-existing knowledge, specific instructions, and a prompt of whatever length or type you want. So it can be achieved with ChatGPT too, albeit slightly different process and not as polished, I don't think. But yeah, you can do it both ways.
Yeah, no matter what you use, it might be custom GPTs, might be Claude projects, doesn't really matter. Make sure the instructions are strict and clear on a specific task. That's the important thing here when it comes to AI agents. Not expecting one single project or custom GPT to do everything.
Yeah.
The best way to get the most out of this is to be extremely specific and have separate AI agents for individual tasks. So then you can be as specific as possible in the instructions that you give to it. And having that unique point of view knowledge, whether that be in a transcript or somewhere else, is also just as important, I would say, to actually have a good quality output of content. Because if not, you're just given the same old drivel that everybody else gets out of the tool.
Yeah. Interesting point. We're talking here about ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude, which of course are models themselves. They are, I suppose they might be called layer one solutions. I don't know whether that's accepted terminology in the space actually, but we're working directly with those models. And I would encourage marketers to do the same, because I think if you can work out how to make those models work for you, produce content of the right quality to help you achieve the results you want to achieve, that's going to be a very useful transferable skill and power. We are, as alluded to when we talked about hype, we are seeing the springing up of hundreds, if not thousands, of point solution platforms, which essentially are doing this process for you, where there's a UI and it's going to ask you to input certain information, and it's going to use these models the way we are to try and give you the results. And I don't think those point solutions necessarily are the game changer aspect here. If you know how to use the model itself, you can then adapt that process, you can adjust it, you can iterate it. And given how fast things are moving, I reckon that's a really important and powerful skill to have.
Yeah, not unless you need to empower an entire team with a really sophisticated UI, simple to use and whatnot. You can probably get by just as well, if not better, using the native tool itself, I would say. You see things now like B2B message tester and generator. All it's doing is just layering Anthropic or OpenAI behind it.
Yeah.
You can get the exact same information, probably better with, integrated knowledge and whatnot that you give it. The output is probably better from the native tool than it is these layered on products.
Yeah, I suspect so.
Sorry, before we move on, because
Okay.
I felt like you were going to move on there. Is there a place where you shouldn't be using AI to write content for you? Or at least to aid you in the process?
Probably lots. I'm interested in what's top of your mind right now, because I'm sure that you've got one. But I mean, ultimately, we use this approach to writing content to create social posts to our own standard, in our own voice, that we still edit extensively, right? We're not just copy-pasting what AI outputs, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a pillar page, whether it's a script for something, whether it's a social post. We're still curating, quality controlling, editing, fact-checking the content, right? And I think that's an important distinction. And basically, it's the only thing that separates, the downside of AI slop, low quality content, from the upside, which is using it to augment our unique human capability to create. So one of the areas where you can, not one of the areas where you shouldn't use it, is to help you create your social content, because we're all trying to be active on social. We're trying to share our knowledge, and it's a tool there. I think you can use it to a certain extent within ad copy, although again, you probably don't want to take what you get out of AI without really carefully checking it, because it's one of those areas where I think the promise of AI falls short of what's required in order to truly get results from that medium. But we might go on to that in a minute. Where do you think people shouldn't be using AI?
You navigated that one like a true politician. I've got a few points in mind. Ads is actually one where I would say the ad copy, potentially you could use it. What you layer over the top of an image, for example, probably not. I feel like when it comes to messaging, which is essentially ads, because you're distributing a message to a cohort of people that's trying to resonate with them, I just feel like there's too many intricate details in like the audience and the message that you're trying to distribute to them that AI doesn't understand. It doesn't understand the nuances of particular niches and things like that.
Definitely.
That your inside knowledge has
Yeah.
about your audience, about your buyer. You know, your company will understand your buyer and your audience way better than AI ever could, and you need to lean on those things when it comes to messaging and ads a lot of the time.
Related to that, I had campaign research as a topic to discuss on my list, because I think there are ways to use AI to support yourself in those processes, but it's not an area where I feel you can heavily rely on or really trust AI. And I think that goes right to the root of the issue in terms of what you're looking there for there is not a generative answer.
Yeah.
You're looking for a more determined answer, and that requires an analytical approach, which large language models don't offer you, and therefore the results you get from using an LLM to think about campaign strategy, targeting, messaging, etc., might not be totally trustworthy. Well, won't be trustworthy, and you've got to be more in charge there. But for the ad copy itself, particularly for search ads, you know, I think
search ads,
where words really are the only element, I think you've got more potential to see a real help from AI in terms of productivity.
Yeah, productivity for sure. Like, again, there still might be nuances and language that you want to use in that ad copy that AI doesn't know about, and like wouldn't link like that copy and that message with your brand and your audience. It might not put those connections together, which your knowledge will do.
I dare say with the approach, if you took something like the approach we take with blog content, then you may be able to achieve a scenario where it can. But not without it. Not if you're simply asking it to, you know, generate 10 ideas for a search ad headline. You're going to get 10 ideas based on everything that's been written before. So that's unlikely to stand out from a crowd.
Yeah. But I mean, other than that, website copy is maybe the other one where, again, like you've mentioned the word trust a few times, and it's like, I'm not sure I would trust AI to write website copy because it's so important.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, having almost all of your buyers go through your website at some point in their journey, the message and the copy that's on that website needs to be absolutely perfect. And do you trust perfect copy from an AI?
No,
I'm not sure.
No, absolutely. There's a creativity element, and I think there are various different ways to interpret the word creativity. But when it comes to web copy, creativity is required to communicate concisely, in a compelling way that really cuts through and gets a message across quickly. That's the creativity we seek in web copy. And I don't think you can trust that you're going to get that creativity out of AI for sure. So it's a place where, again, I think throughout the entire, marketing pursuit, strategy, execution, analysis, AI is a productivity aid to everybody because it can just help you ideate quickly. It can write quicker than you can, so you can get ideas out of it. But it's not more than that in the areas we're discussing now, where you can't really ask it to create what you're trying to create, for sure. One other area of execution where I think we're turning a corner right now is image creation. I reckon as recently as a couple of weeks ago, most people have said AI is not ready for image creation. You can always tell, particularly with hands and things of that nature. And, AI output very often has this AI feel about it, doesn't it? But given what our creative team are doing in testing internally at Blend, I'm really quite impressed with what people are able to get out of certain AI tools in terms of maybe photography that you're unable to get in reality. In particular, that seems to be an opportunity or an area of application for me, a place you can't go with a camera so easily, but you can maybe get the stock photo you need out of an AI image generation tool. The tool of choice might not be Midjourney, which I think would be most people's first thought. There's a few other interesting ones out there that need to be considered. But yeah, I think we've maybe reached a place or a point in time now where we no longer notice when we don't notice which of the images we're seeing are AI generated. So I reckon that's going to progress rapidly now.
Yeah, I would absolutely encourage everybody to go and check out, like you say, whether it's Midjourney or an alternative tool for image creation, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what it can give you now. And again, it's another application that can be used now. alongside, content generation.
Definitely. Where AI probably isn't quite ready for prime time is video generation.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people are trying hard to crack that particular challenge, and there are tools, coming out to do that. But I've not seen anything that convinces me that AI is ready to sort of pass by unnoticed as a video generator. But does AI have a role to play in video processing, editing and post-processing in demand generation?
Yeah, I mean, it can do. I've tried quite a few tools, to be honest, in terms of like social clip editing and podcast editing using AI. And there are definite use cases when it comes to like audio in particular. Tools like Premiere Pro now even have it. There's another one called Podcastal, Veed. Like these all have audio enhancers,
Okay.
which can really make a badly sounding podcast or just, clip of audio sound like studio audio.
Really? Wow.
Basically, it's really good. But again, it's not perfect. So you might struggle at times if there's a lot of wind noise or whatever. It probably can't block it all out, but a lot of the time it can do a pretty good job. I've tried things like clip editors as well, Opus Clips being one of them, and I tell you what, like it's pretty good, but it doesn't give me the perfect output that I think is required these days for social. Like it struggles again to understand the nuances of I want that hook to be there. Like that's the word we should start on. That's the point we should really capture in this clip. And it couldn't do it as well as a human identifying that to be the right clip. So there are definitely things to explore, but I wouldn't say it's a nailed on one right now.
Yeah, I think the video clip application is one where if you can't do it without AI, then you can probably use it to sort of help you. But once you get to a place where you have the ability and the desire to really fine tune it, then you're better off doing that by hand currently.
Yeah.
Or maybe in time using a combined process, AI to do part of it, but then apply your finishing touches, which broadly speaking is what we're recommending everywhere, isn't it? It's like even if you're using AI to create something, you've still got to be in control of that process, and you've still got to do the final touches, do the final edit to make sure it's reflective of what you want to say, and what message you want to get across.
Yeah, but when it comes to video generation and like generating audio, for me, AI does not cut it at all. I just think even if it looks realistic and even sounds kind of realistic, a lot of the time it's too polished. Like you don't have, like I just said there, you don't have these slip-ups and these filler words that are put into the content as much.
Yeah.
And I could easily tell if something, a video or an audio transcript or whatever it may be, is generated by AI, and it just feels inauthentic.
And you've just got me thinking about when is authenticity or polish a requirement of the recipient using an AI generated product? Because we're all hung up on it, aren't we? We're all hung up on whether that image looks real, that video looks authentic, or that audio sounds real. But in the case of blog narration, which is one of the very, quickly adopted applications of AI audio generation, I wonder how much it matters to the listener that it doesn't sound totally realistic. For me, that's probably an area where the flaw/limitation of AI is less critical, less impactful. But for some reason, when you're choosing to watch something or look at something, it matters a great deal, doesn't it? It's important to us.
Yeah, authenticity has a scale for sure in terms of like how much is acceptable. Well, how much inauthenticity is acceptable to people. I would say, things where like blog narration, it doesn't really matter who's reading that blog, does it? But if you put a video there narrating that blog, all of a sudden, I'm not sure I'd be happy if I saw an AI-generated avatar reading that blog to me. It just would not feel the same.
I think a lot of people agree with you.
And I think it's down to human connection as well. Like, when you watch video, when you watch a person, you're trying to create a connection and a deeper feeling than, just something being read to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
No.
I agree. And that may change, right? I think humans evolve, and we probably will evolve in how we react and respond to AI with different levels of like authenticity. But that could take a very long time. And right now, if you want to get results right now, then you have to bear that in mind in terms of using AI and getting a result back. There are some real risks to taking it too far. While preparing for this, I tried to think about all the ways that I have seen AI be used with positive impact, and I thought about the broad marketing process of strategy, execution, and analysis, as we discussed. Within execution, we found lots of applications. Within strategy and within analysis, I think AI, in particular, the AI that we're all thinking about right now, is held back by its generative nature and the fact that it isn't processing the data and the information in a deterministic, completely trustworthy way. So we haven't yet seen AI really get a foothold in those areas and spaces. It's relegated in strategy and in analysis to a productivity aid for the most part, I think. Maybe in analysis there will be ways to use AI to interrogate or interpret insights, but for the most part, you can't really trust AI to process data like in a completely dependable manner. Therefore, it can't perform an analysis task the same way you can.
No, it can compile insights. Maybe I feel like that's the right phrase to use. Yeah, but it can't analyze the data like a human can.
No, I think it's wrong to. I mean, there's a lot of talk about putting spreadsheets of information into AI tools and having it, work with that information. But I think it's wrong to expect it to do that in a truly numerical and numerically accurate way. And therefore, you've just got to be really careful about what you get out of it. I experimented with a marketing strategy AI tool this week to see whether it was better than I expected, but in reality it was a UI on top of a language model that we're using ourselves, and it didn't do anything but take text that I provided from a variety of sources and generate pretty generic output that didn't feel like unique or very innovative takes on ICP, positioning, messaging, etc., etc. So I think we've got a way to go before AI, if ever, is a great asset in the strategy stage of marketing.
Yeah, can be used in the process for sure to, quicken things up and streamline what you're doing. If I think about audience research, an AI can't go out and ask your customers, what channels they use for content consumption and what they think of your brand. But what it can do is read masses of information that you upload to it. If you have a load of sales calls, if you have one-to-one meetings with ideal buyers, you can upload all of that information to AI and get it to, tell you specific insights from it that you want.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There are ways to use it in the process.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's ultimately doing something that you could do yourself, but doing it a lot faster, because in that productivity vein, right? Reading that content, it can just do it at such scale, such speed, and find you the interesting insights within. It's very, very good at that. Text processing is very, very good at that. Okay. So really, if marketers want to apply AI to their demand generation today and see a positive impact quickly, it's in the content creation area, isn't it? But for me, that comes with a dose of worry and concern, because I can't help but think of the risks and downsides to widespread AI proliferation within content creation. For me, it's a case of thinking about, if AI unlocks content creation at massive scale, we know that not everybody will use it with the same degree of care and concern and quality control as we are. And yet there are no barriers to putting that content in the platforms and in the places that our buyers currently use. And so I wonder whether there is a consequence or a negative impact of this evolution, which is that buyers run out of patience for those places because they're no longer able to filter out or siphon out the high quality, authentic, crafted with care content from the mediocre AI generated noise on those platforms, and at the same time AI changes the economy of some of these places. With the rise of zero-click search, what is the incentive for businesses to put content out in a way that Google and others can use it to not provide them traffic? So I think the platforms of today are going to go through a really interesting, challenging, and potentially fatal evolution as the value exchange that exists for buyers when we think about demand generation to use them could get completely reinvented by AI.
I think it's already begun. Like you say, with zero-click searches happening and the introduction of Google's AI search box, it is already happening. But I think a lot of the time, especially when it comes to using AI in social, when you see these spammy comments on like LinkedIn posts, it's so irritating, but people see straight through that stuff. I mean, that is clear as day now for any person who's like aware of AI content and is seeing it regularly. Like, you see straight through these things easily.
Yeah.
So the authenticity factor in content, particularly on a peer-to-peer level, like a one-to-few and a one-to-one level, is going to be more important.
I think that's absolutely true. We have a window of time during which people who use AI with care can drive really, really good results. And then something will have to change, because ultimately, you're right, you can spot a low quality AI comment or piece of content pretty easily. But if the volume of that explodes exponentially, it won't matter that you can spot it easily. You won't spend time there because you won't be bothered to do so. So that will, I think, produce one of two outcomes. And every challenge is an opportunity in disguise, right? Which is either the algorithms of these platforms will have to evolve to really leverage that one-to-one connection. The fact that I trust you and I'm connected to you means I can rely on you to give me quality content. So I'll see more content from you because the algorithm will shift, because I won't tolerate seeing content, low quality AI content from people I don't know, trust and respect. Or worse, buyers will go elsewhere. And I mean, there's already a migration from search to social to Slack and WhatsApp and other walled communities where currently marketers can't penetrate in the mass automated, scalable way that we love to do and then ruin things with. So it's going to be an interesting future, and there will be change because marketing always drives change in buyer behavior. But there's an opportunity now to use this stuff to really great effect and to accelerate your demand generation results. And, that's great news for marketers.
Yeah, you just touched on the two things that I wrote down, actually, which was, I think this is why short form video, okay, it had a rise probably during like COVID time, but it's had an even bigger rise over the last couple of years, and everybody's adopting short form video because it's a natural way, an authentic way that you can connect with your audience, and it is not AI driven. And currently, but the audience consuming it right now knows that is a human speaking. Like, they are getting an authentic character from that video. And community as well being another one. I think there's a rise in usage in communities, and again, it's a walled off place where you can be safe knowing that at least the contributors in this community are real, they are human for now.
What I'm interested about communities, this is probably a topic for another day, but what I'm interested about communities is communities that I've been a part of tend to operate in a fairly similar way, which is it's basically agreed that you're not going to pitch your product there. You're there to give value and information before you get opportunity. So people don't tend to pitch their product, meaning when people ask for recommendations and they get responses, I've used X, Y, Z, and I like them for these reasons, that information has to come into that community from outside, from somewhere. And I'm really interested to see to think about what the future looks like in terms of where do the products that get recommended inside the community get their first break with the members of that community? Because right now, that's demand generation as we know it. It's SEO, it's social, it's paid, etc., etc. Because to get into that community, you've got to sort of earn your way in.
Well, you've got to be used, I think.
Yes, exactly. But getting your first use without a vendor of something going into a community and recommending itself, which I don't want to see happen, because that's the beauty of communities. It's just an interesting dynamic. How does your brand get into the community as a recommended solution? Of course, by being used, but the way that we get our users is changing so rapidly. Yeah, really, really interesting dynamics going on there, I reckon, in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Do you just want to recap on exactly the points we made there? And because I feel like, we were a little bit all over the place in where we were jumping because AI is just such a massive topic. But what I really wanted to, give to our audience is the real ways they should be using AI right now, and they'd be silly not to use them in these ways.
Yeah, I mean, the number one way to use AI is to create a customized version to the best of your ability to do so, using tools like Claude projects, using ChatGPT, custom GPTs that can produce written content for SEO and for social, in line with your standards for quality, in line with your opinion, your point of view, and to help you accelerate the execution of those strategies. So you are most likely going to need to come up with a way to create the prompting information for that. You can't beat podcasting, you can't beat long form video, webinars, etc. to create the input, and then use AI to essentially repurpose that knowledge, that information, into your pillar pages, your blog articles, certain social posts, and maybe elements of your paid strategy. Those are the areas where we're seeing the most success today.
Nice one. Cool. Let's wrap it up there. Still can't believe this is the first time we've talked about AI on the podcast, which is crazy. But yeah, hopefully we've brought you something valuable and insightful. Like, these are actual practical ways you can use it because we've tested it and are using it actively now. We're not just speculating about what can work. This is truly what works right now that you can adopt instantly. Yep. So cool. Let's wrap it up. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Demand Decoded. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.